After months of recovering from the disaster that was Mega Man X6 and then later enjoying some alone time with the extreme games on the Game Boy Color, never in a million years would I dare say the following sentence. Oh, I bet Mega Man X7 isn't really as bad as people make it out to be. Oh, it's bad. As far back as I can even remember, it has been unanimously agreed upon that when it comes to the Mega Man X franchise, one of the worst games to ever scratch not just the X series, but Mega Man as a whole is none other than Mega Man X7 here. And that's just putting it gently. Ever since my first time with the X franchise as far back as the X collection on the Nintendo GameCube back in 2005, I know that in terms of my own personal history with Mega Man X7, it was the one and only X game that constantly flew over my head the more I went back to playing the franchise. Yeah, it took me this long to get to this point, and y'all better be happy about it. But you see, anytime I went back to the series though, it was always to the classics. Mega Man X1 and X2 on the SNES and occasionally X3 to numerous playthroughs of X4 with Ultimate Armor or Black Zero because, let's face it, X4 is the go to the entire series. Mega Man X was always in the end about the 2D style of platforming that was just built to be kinetic and action oriented. However, in the case of X7, while the 2D side-scrolling was back for this game to some capacity, the main focus was entirely to bring Mega Man X onto the 3D realm, something that by this point, you already had plenty of games by the late 90s to early 2000s doing with their franchises respectively. The classic examples of this translation to 2D to 3D formula are the classics like Super Mario 64 and Ocarina of Time that many provide for this case as comparing their 2D adventures to their 3D ones. You see that their gameplay styles and mechanics are vastly different in their approaches, essentially creating a brand new way to play the franchise while keeping the core concepts intact. Plus, no matter what people have to say about them today, these two games are still easily the best of their time and all time as well. Okay, at least Ocarina of Time. I don't know about Super Mario 64. Again, these points have always been made in the context of X7's flop, given its structure and gameplay on its own, resulting in being the worst game of the entire franchise. And here we are now 20 years later, where a dude like me on YouTube is cracking his whip to test out the waters of what is it that makes this game so trash to begin with. But of course, before diving into that said failure, broken disaster, utter garbage experience that is Mega Man X7, there's still a little bit of history to cover here just to get a rough idea surrounding its failure, which all began in the years 2001 to 2003, as those years they're funny years, man. While I was at the ripe old age of 3, because what else was I supposed to do besides cry to my mom, the gaming console of that era was an interesting lineup. You had the Nintendo GameCube that released back in 2001 with games like Luigi's Mansion, Metroid Prime, The Legend of Zelda Wind Waker, and Super Mario Sunshine, which are good games then and even now, considering Mario Sunshine is in 3D All-Stars and Metroid Prime got a remaster earlier this year, which was pretty impressive, you know, and Luigi's Mansion got a Dark Moon Switch port instead. Dude, man, my man is getting the sloppy seconds. Come on now, Nintendo. And on the other side of the gaming coin, however, you also had the Xbox starting its debut out with Halo, since, you know, you gotta start somewhere at least, and also the fabled PlayStation 2 thriving as well, where that console just had about everything you wanted on the damn thing. Holy. See, listen, we can go over the statistics of this console any day of the week, but it's not a surprise really at this point why it was considered the highest console on the market back then. I mean, it had SSX on 3 on it too, that's just insane. Low-key, I'm more of an SSX on tour kind of guy. And now in the context of Mega Man X, this is where things get a bit interesting, or rather painfully annoying in hindsight. By this point in the turn of the millennia, the X series was slowly fading into existence in the eyes of Capcom, given that the need to be in the 2D space wasn't the same as before. Sure, by the time 2003 came in rolling, there was already the Zero and Battle Network games, as I stressed in my Mega Man Extreme review, but those made sense in the long run because those were just made in the handheld setting. Mega Man Zero especially, since it was a totally different series that was intended to keep alive that dynamic 2D element from the PS1 trilogy while focusing more on Zero as a character in the process, which I do hope to discuss in a future video. But on the console setting, things were just completely different at the end of the day regarding Mega Man X, since people didn't vibe with the Blue Bomber as they did before the PS1 or even back on the SNES era. I mean, you had a SMT3 Nocturne released that year after all, so how the hell was it going to compete with that? This also isn't to say that games like Mega Man X4 X4 was any bad when it released or that Mega Man X5 and X6 were any better. It was that Capcom felt that it was their time to head into the 3D realm with the Blue Bomber moving forward, to try something totally new with the franchise with a 3D space like never before. Wait, does the Mega Man Legends games not exist at all? Like, what? You also have to consider the fact that Capcom was just busy promoting other franchises at this point, such as Resident Evil since its debut on the PS1 in 1996, and in 2000, there was the inception of the Devil May Cry franchise, as it introduced the world to the Giga Chad Dante himself for players to enjoy. Wait a minute, I just mentioned Dante and SMT3 in the same video. Oh god, wait a minute! Because of these factors and seeing that many were on the 3D platformer craze at the time, Mega Man would then jump back into the limelight and showcase the latest entry being Mega Man X7, their very first attempt at making a fully playable 3D platform for the X series, where, boy, we know how that turned out in the end. But enough about all of that, as it's finally time to dive into this game, rip it apart, drink in between to cure my own insanity, and laugh at this embarrassment that is a Mega Man X game, as yeah, it is finally time to tackle Mega Man X7 once and for all. God, why are we born to suffer? Already right out the gate, there's one question to answer first before starting things off. Is Mega Man X7 worse than Mega Man X6? And the answer to that is actually a big fat No. But there's a small asterisk attached to that. You see, as much as we can go back to my Mega Man X6 review and talk about how much I hated the gameplay structure of that game, which I still do, the reality of X6 is that it was a rather okay experience that was simply flawed due to the incomplete state of the game when it released. With a broken level design, the amount of bugs and cheat code utility you needed to beat the game, and Hymax just existing because screw him, X6 was a game that while didn't have a coat of polish, it was still somewhat fairly received with a positive viewpoint. Yet with Mega Man X7, during the entire course of its development cycle, it was considered a finished product from start to finish. Capcom had the intentions of fleshing out that 3D style for the series and honing in on those elements in the way they felt was right for the franchise. And man, I don't know if they were right, but like I said, 2003 was a funny year, man. Besides, does it really matter which one is worse than the other? Because at the end of the day, both of them suck. Regarding X7 as a whole as the quote-unquote worst X game for reasons I'll obviously get into more details later, I will say that it does provide some intriguing elements to the franchise, which yeah, I am using that term very loosely. For one, the story centers around not only the usual X and Zero versus Sigma debacle that we've been used to for the past few entries now, but about a newcomer named Axel and a mercenary group called Red Alert who also track down Mavericks, but in a more edgy fashion this time around, since they kill their targets instead of arresting them, which is not something that X and Zero have already been doing for nearly 6 whole games now, But then one night Axel decided to call it quits and leave Red Alert, while at the same time Zero was out and about patrolling. And after an intro stage later that kind of looks too damn similar to the one from Mega Man X, Axel and Zero then save the day and head back to Hunter HQ to then deal with the matters thereafter. Meeting X was just so lame.
Why must Reploids continue this accursed cycle of aggression?
That's right. There's also voice acting in this game. Okay, so before we continue on with the horrible mess that is X7, there is one big hot take that I gotta talk about here, because in all honesty, the voice acting in Mega Man X7 isn't really as bad as people make it out to be. Now, don't get me wrong, it's still bad by no means, definitely not getting an Emmy of the Year, but it's not as pathetically low performed like the English dub in Mega Man X4, not at all, because that one was just absolutely terrible. Look, you can have your "what am I fighting for?" and you "what do you think you're doing?" Thank you very much. And as for why I don't mind the voice acting for Mega Man X7, honestly, I can't tell you, but I can say that for the most part, it does allow a level of characterization to occur similar to what I found with the Japanese voice acting in Mega Man X6. Of course, that one is way better, and we also have Japanese dub for this game too as part of the options, but again, hear me out. Axel, funnily enough, is one of my favorite voices of the entire cast, mainly because it demonstrates his naive attitude and again that Shona-like protagonist for this adventure, which I guess judging by his design alone, was probably the main focus Capcom wanted it for him in terms of his introduction. Yo, my man be drippin'. But besides him, the rest of the cast is just alright. Like, yeah, it's fine and dandy, and not like I'm gonna be suddenly bombarded by numerous voice lines that would maybe want to spin around and around and do a triangle kick, amongst other things out there, you know? Okay, fine, I'll play this stupid voice clip. There, are you happy now? Are you happy? Are you glad this happened? In all seriousness, the rest of the cast is rather tame, and while we can argue about X's low battery-like attitude for the entire game here, I can respect the intent of giving him a rather pacifist nature to it in the long run. It at least gives us an understanding of who X is here and why he does the things that he does, but I wish it was emphasized more, as well as with the entire cast in terms of their voice directions. Though, of course, it doesn't beat Mark Gatha, Mega Man X8, and Maverick Hunter X, and that's really saying something. And also, Cygnus's voice? Dude, that gave me flashbacks because I swear his voice sounded familiar.
Alright, Axel. Why don't you start by telling us why you left? Jin Kazama, a child of destiny.
Voice acting tangent aside now, and back to the main story. After the little parent-teacher conference with Axel is where the juicy stuff starts to happen. Red Alert contacts Hunter HQ to demand Axel back, and in order to do so, decided to send their 8 strongest agents to wreak havoc across the world as a little contest to see how many Mavericks they can hunt, while also setting the stage for the rest of the game. Oh, and did I forget to mention that Sigma is back, as he's working with Red Alert under a nickname called the Professor and corrupts them to be Mavericks, because of course he does. What else is new? Naturally, given that this is a Mega Man X game, then you gotta go through the motions as you would in the previous entries. You got 8 more bosses to fight and stages to go through, hard and sub tanks to collect, and parts to find and upgrade the crew, defeat Sigma in the end, who now really looks like Buzz Lightyear, and boom, the credits roll and your sanity somehow remains intact. Yeah, so unlike the other games where the story was crucial regarding plot points and events, here X7 doesn't really hold anything of substance at all. Besides a brand new playable character that gets most of the spotlight being Axel, who basically lives up to the whole early 2000s shonen protagonist like I mentioned, X and Zero just go about their business here as per usual, fighting Mavericks and beating Sigma. And sure, there are in-between cutscenes after beating each Maverick that gives us a better glimpse of the relationship Axel and Zero start to develop as Zero learns more about who Axel is, as well as how Red was duped by Sigma. But besides all of that, Red Alert is just about as generic as they are any other Maverick group we face for the past 6 entries, as they are more or less the usual infected bunch, much like that of X3 and X5, where they were forced to fight because Sigma made them to. And these Mavericks, boss fights or not, are so uninteresting, dude, and have the most boring lines, with some exceptions like Snipe Anteater talking to Axel here and how he calls him an old geezer, or Splash Warfly, who mentions a toaster, which got me more intrigued at the idea that there are toasters in this robotic future world, and there is a conflict between Maverick Hunters and Red Alert here. Red as a standalone character is also a cool spotlight in and of its own, as it's rare to see characters outside of Sigma questioning their morals and actually wondering if what they are doing is actually good, similar to Gate and Colonel's ideals in X6 and X4, but nothing much really surmounts to all of that. Like, we're expected to care for Red towards the endgame portion when Axel tells him to come with them, and I'm sitting there like, God, this story is so dumb. However, despite what the story actually was at the end of the day, what does make this game different from the rest of the franchise is of course the gameplay structure, as the game is broken up between 2D and 3D sections that can be summarized with trying to glue a bunch of sticks together and somehow expect it to be a frickin' supercomputer. Graphics in this game is something that I can't even consider early 2000s at its best, especially since games like Mega Man Legends look way more polished and well animated compared to whatever it is that they were going with Mega Man X here. And in the previous games, despite their gameplay structure and level design, they at least had something to show for it with its pixelated graphics, and their graphical fidelity presented unique ways of showing what the world was like for the Blue Bomber. With X7, everything is so generic and lackluster in presentation that it feels like at times I was playing through a tech demo for a concept idea rather than actually playing a finished product. But like the previous entries before it, X7 has the standard 2D side-scrolling high-paced action, though it's not as graceful as fun as before. They don't come near to the quality of kinetic energy and fast-paced platforming as the previous games because of the weight of each character feeling somewhat heavy to even get a semblance of what the previous games provided, with all the wall climbing, dashing, running, and just moving around the stage. Like, as you can see here, the gang's running animation isn't as solid or fluid as the PS1 days, given how much you can see that bro's boots must be crushing at his feet with each step. It's like the iron boots from the Legend of Zelda franchise. Essentially, you're gonna be fighting with the controls of X7 more so than actually playing the damn game to begin with, which is not even half the battle either, since we also can't forget to mention the 3D sections of the game as well. You know, the rotten butter of this already molded toast. When it comes to the 3D sections, I can completely understand that the intentions behind the 3D was to give a fresh breath of air for the X franchise, given that Capcom felt the 2D gameplay was beginning to stale. But fresh isn't something I feel is the best way to describe it. In terms of X7's biggest innovation with the 3D sections, the problems that lie in them is their execution, because again, on concept, the idea would have been a perfectly good one if given more of that proper time to stew, or let alone cook, period. The way this game handles these sections isn't by dramatically changing the stage dynamic of the X franchise just to fit the 3D mold as would what any other game have done in the past. As I mentioned before with Super Mario 64 and Ocarina of Time, those games optimize the movement and control of Mario and Link to fit within a 3D realm, and they even go beyond by allowing additional controls and gameplay in the process, all to make them stand out on their own when compared to their 2D counterparts. Or even how Sonic Adventure 1 and 2 has done theirs by allowing more to work with regarding 3D layouts and stage dynamics and design, as depending on each game, it's more or less built to have Sonic traverse in a 3D plane and just allow for that high-speed platforming to occur. Here in X7 though, the layouts are basically just the 2D sections but flipped in 3D, which doesn't allow for much challenge or even good platforming, because now you can snake your way through enemies like you can do in almost the entire stage in Splash Warfly or in Snipe Anteaters. Or if you have these enemy gauntlets like in Vanishing Gungaroo stage, you can just pass by them and meander through without not having to fight anything in your path. Or if you have these big open areas, most if not the entire time is just using the dumb left and right bumpers to rotate the camera, and then have these instant death pit scenarios in this large area that just doesn't help with anything in basic platforming. Like, it's all just dumb for the sake of being dumb, and that's what makes X7 falter a lot. Another fumble of the 3D sections is also the lack of the depth perception in certain areas, where the game doesn't even give you a window of opportunity to platform. Of how dumb the wall climbing is here, you're just screwed no matter what. Fixed camera angles are also a big thing here too, where you don't have the control of the camera in certain areas, and when you have to make a turn or do some of that platforming, you're gambling to see if there's a free bingo space or an enemy is there to wreck your shit. Why does X look like he's going to heaven? There's just simply no way to really excuse the poor quality of the 3D segments, as considering these were the game's highest selling point, as it just feels wrong on so many levels, both in gameplay and in level design. Mega Man X7 just doesn't play as a 3D platformer, but instead plays as a Mega Man X game in 3D, resulting in these 3D sections that look so bleak, boring, and just absolutely pathetic for the standards of that time. On its own, Mega Man X7 suffers simply a lot from a lack of ambition, rather than allowing the ambition to naturally flow through, presenting a budgeted 3D game that most times have the 2D sections to at least hold on to something original. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised at all that the game was originally going to be all 2D until Capcom decided to give them the notes late in development and say, yo, we need a 3D Mega Man game, to which the response was ultimately this dumpster fire. And also, in case you didn't notice that in the footage itself that sometimes the weapons meter changes in length, that's because I'm also playing this game on the Legacy Collection, which allows you to play the game in Rookie Hunter mode. Yeah, I'm not proud of it, but when you have to circle back to multiple stages to get items and don't want to deal with the BS stage layouts, and also not want to constantly break your controller in two because of the boss fights and how long they can be, yeah, I honestly do not care about your opinion in the comment sections here. Like Mega Man X6 before it, this game doesn't want me to play the game under fair circumstances, so I'm just gonna say screw it and we play by my rules. Level design also doesn't complement the game's 3D segments, as given the structure of the game, it all feels generically paired with how bland the graphics already look. They don't extend beyond the whole dichotomy of the X franchise, given that they are in this super robot utopia or wherever it is they are, and because of the level design, they don't feel as expansive as they should have been. Sure, yeah, we're infiltrating a naval ship, but boy does it look so boring to run through. Okay, yeah, we're in the forest, but it's just meh. Wish they took notes from Web Spider or Wire Sponge, to be honest, in terms of their level themes and designs. Oh cool, we're in cyberspace for Snipe Anteater stage, and it's nothing but blue and orange, with enemies randomly showing up like there's some kind of a threat. The only ride chaser sequence in Ride Borsky stage is a slog ass to control. Well, you have to pick up these bombs lying on the floor that aren't even doing anything. anything. And we also can't forget that this game is incredibly stupid. But of course, it's not a Mega Man X game without covering the characters you get to select for this adventure you got going for you. And for Mega Man X7 here, it's certainly a wild-ass ride. Like the Mega Man Extreme games, you can swap between the two characters on the fly, and from the start of the game, you have Zero and Axel to use as your close and long range options, while X isn't a playable character without having to go through some hoops in the process. Why, you may be asking? Because Capcom is just stupid. In order to have the ability to play as the titular character here, since you know the game is called Mega Man X7 and not Zero and Axel's robot buddy cop adventure, you can unlock X in one of two ways. The first is going through the game naturally, where you beat all the 8 Mavericks, gain their abilities, and as you venture towards the final area, X then straps on his boots and takes matters into his own hands, giving you access to X for the final stages, but with some major drawbacks. X, unlike Axel and Zero, won't have much to offer, as he will have a small health bar and bare bone upgrades, unlike the other 2 Maverick Hunters that you were so used to using during your playthrough. This in turn makes X feel more like a wasted unlockable rather than the main character, because if we were getting X towards the end of the game, then I simply wish he had more perks to him instead of trying to shuffle around some pieces for him like one big ass idiot. Because of that feeling, I usually opt for the second alternative, as to unlock X there, you have to rescue at minimum 64 Reploids that are scattered throughout the stages, as the rescue mechanic is back like the previous 2 entries, but that also has its own catches. Much like Mega Man X6 with a nightmare corrupting the Reploids you save, in X7, anything can get these guys instantly killed. Yeah, I'm talking about a single shot fired, a cheese touch, or just a teensy scratch and bye bye Reploid that could have gotten you a neat upgrade because they learned nothing from the previous game. Due to all that, I had to play X7 in a roundabout way, where I wasted more time beating 2 stages and rescuing enough Reploids, also I can get X as an unlockable early, which again defeats the whole purpose of this game of even being called Mega Man X7. Do you see why people hate this game now? And in case this wasn't stressed enough, the menu screens in this game are so long. Alia, stop asking me 23 questions here. Let me pick the damn stage with a funny looking onion dude. Now, if you choose to go this route towards getting X, then it's what a regular Mega Man X game would be, as naturally, you would find the armor parts for him and manage the part system and hard tanks between him and the other 2 Reploids. And now that I say this part out loud, yeah, there's armor parts and regular parts to collect, like duh. The part system done here feels a lot more like the Extreme games, where after the end of the stage and rescuing enough Reploids, you are given these CDs to use to upgrade the gang, and you can use these CDs to upgrade the power, speed, and defense of each character, something that also seems reminiscent to the Battle Network games. However, unlike the Extreme games, these parts are of one use only, and so it's a game of managing your upgrades and see which one gets which benefits, or rather I should say, which 2 characters you prefer playing the most. As for the armor parts in this game, X's glide armor for this entry can get the benefits from the get-go when you visit a light capsule like in the SNES games and in Mega Man X4, but dude, Dr. Light, like listen buddy, like come here, like look, I appreciate the gesture here, I mean I really do, but this armor, it sucks, man. Nothing of value is seen with this armor besides stronger defense and charged weapons, and the glide gimmick ability, it's just so boring. Like, what the hell is this? As you can see, from those slow load times to the unpolished look and janky controls, as well as the Mavericks for this game being completely annoying to beat because oh my god, why are their health bars so damn big, the game itself just feels like a mesh of ideas that just don't fully work well. The Mavericks for one are perfectly good examples of this, as despite story-wise having a level of importance given they were once co-workers of Axel, they don't do much in terms of their attacks, what they offer as special weapons, and again, their voice lines are so damn annoying. But not as annoying though as Alia constantly shouting for the transmitter almost every time I enter a freaking stage.
Can you hear me, Axel? Can you hear me, Zero? Can you hear me, X?
Shut up! Special weapons are also something here that I didn't like using as I was pushing through the game, because quite frankly, you can win the fight with X's Charge Buster, as that is super OP from the moment you get access to him if you just rescue those Reploids early. Sure, in some cases I did use them to get the ball rolling faster, but even then it didn't help shave off some time at all, because again, the menu screens after you're done beating each stage are such a chore to go through. In fact, if you do want to play this game, by all means just use Axel and X for this, because they simply simply will make the game less annoying in terms of progression, and that's all thanks to that lock-on ability they both have that alleviates the stress of manually aiming at your enemies. It's nothing as good as what the 2D games did with their combat systems, but for the mess this game already is, it's something at least, and better than what they did for Zero here, because my man, look how they massacred my boy. In the previous games, I always mentioned how Zero had this Devil May Cry style upgrade system where his special abilities were tied to his overall gameplay, allowing you to create cool combos and moves that felt so enjoyable to experience. And to tie that back with my sentiments with the whole 3D gameplay being piss poor, I hate how underutilized Zero was in a game that could have been a good 3D platformer. Since Capcom by that point developed Devil May Cry in 2001, where that game was all about 3D action and swordplay, it would have been cool to see Zero actually get something similar where his moves were like that of Dante's, a special ability where it's a cool dash attack or a grabber that hauls enemies to his direction, some insane 1-2 hit combos that can be paired with a special weapon ability as a finisher. Hell, you could have given the dude a buster as a special weapon and add more of a combo system with the guy, but no, he just sucks. My man is pathetic in this game, and I hate having to use him unless I needed to grab some collectibles, because otherwise, nah man, learn to exercise that Second Amendment right, baby. All in all, Mega Man X7 is indeed the worst game of the franchise, but I can't deny saying that I never had any fun playing it, despite how much I really hate it. While there was a lot of potential in seeing a 3D platformer after Mega Man Legends 2, X7 suffered a lot in the end by that lack of ambition and proper budgeting and creativity. The game ultimately became a 2D game stretched out in a 3D sphere, and the result became one of the worst experiences out of a Mega Man X game, no, out of a 3D platformer period. But regardless of that notion, I still enjoyed the things that it offered because at the very least, it was something that was still familiar to me in terms of the franchise. X and Zero was there, and the ability to play a new character after 6 whole games was pretty cool, and I do wish more was done in the end to make this go from a missed potential to something that there had potential but was still satisfying at the very least. Like Sonic Frontiers, for example. Yet with the controls and gameplay amounting to nothing, the stage layouts being vastly empty levels that don't engage with the player, the gameplay of the three amigos not being the same as before, the lack of optimization for it to be a 3D Mega Man game with cool gameplay design and controls that would make it shine in terms of reinventing the wheel, so to speak, the speed that was once there from the 2D games, X7 really did fumble a lot, and I genuinely wish it didn't after playing this game and seeing it for what it was and what it could have become. But besides all of that, that's just a wrap on Mega Man X7, I guess, as yeah, despite this emotional feeling of missed opportunities and whatnot, the game still sucks 20 years later. But that doesn't mean it's not the last game of the franchise, since we still have one more to deal with after all. And one more Mega Man X title to deal with is exactly what it is, as we're going to be tackling Mega Man X8 when it comes to the Mega Man X franchise here, as we're finally towards the climax of it all, the ending, the conclusion to the franchise as far as we're aware, but of course we'll talk more about that down the line, because right now I need to get at least a grasp back of my own sanity.